All right, in this fourth lesson of the fourth unit, we're going to look at the Cold War culture here in the United States. So, if you were alive during the time period and you had an everyday life, this is probably what your life would have been like. So, as always, make sure you listen for the causes and effects, and then also be thinking about which challenge as I go through this fourth unit was really hard for the United States to go through. So, again, if you were living during the time, how would the Cold War impact your life? Is kind of what the point is of this lesson. So, getting right into it, you're going to notice that we're going to be students of history and we're going to try to prevent another Great Depression from happening. Because following World War One, farmers had hardships, and then eventually down the road, with our overproduction, we went into the Great Depression. So, here in the United States, we're going to try to make sure that doesn't happen again. So, government contracts were canceled, but kind of in small chunks at a time. You're also going to notice that Truman is going to demobilize the army. So, what does that mean? He's going to start scaling back. But as you just saw in lesson four, we're still in the middle of a war. So, we need to have a standing army kind of ready to go. But you're also going to notice that during the time, we're going to shift from wartime economy back to just normal pace economy, I guess you would say. So, what did the government do to help kind of set himself up for success? Is that we created something called the GI Bill. So, the GI Bill was basically a small lump of money that was devoted to veterans. And what these veterans turned the GI Bill into was a home, was a college education, was going to be any sort of small business, I guess you would say. Well, anyways, why this is all such a big deal is that this is going to keep the economy going again. And this is still a thing today. So if you are confused about what you want to do in your next step of life, join the military. They will pretty much pay for your college, they'll train you on the spot. It's all a good deal. And with soldiers coming home from World War II, they are really excited to see their wives. And we go through a rapid growth called the baby boom. And you can see the stat I have there where we're at the highest point, a baby is born every 7 seconds. So our US population is going to explode. So, what is also keeping the economy going? Something called keeping up with the Joneses. So, you have in today's time that you go out and you get something pretty cool and you show it off to your friend, and then maybe the next day, a week later, they're going to try to top you somehow. That's kind of what's happening now. So you're going to notice that people are buying cars, they're buying boats, they're buying RVs, they're buying TVs, new technologies I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. But you're going to notice that this is what's going to keep the economy going, along with another war, the Korean War, as I mentioned. So here is question number one. What term was given to the massive population boost following World War II? So here's that term that we talked about again, Unit 2, called consumerism. So consumerism is when we are going to be buying things left and right, new, latest, and greatest technologies. Now we have a little bit of understanding of how bad credit can get into. So there's going to be some fail safes involved, but we don't need to get into them. But it is worth noting the new technologies that are coming around. So once radios, now it's TVs. Now you're going to see different cars coming about. You're going to notice that people are going to try to outdo each other, as I said before. And with this outdoing or keeping up with the Joneses, that's going to keep the economy pumping during the 50s. So here's an idea of how far we've come with our technology. So on the left, on both of these examples, of what it was like in the 50s. So you can see the TV is not very big and it cost about $1,000. Now you can get a lot better TV for $1,000, obviously, looking at the price comparisons. And this is almost even 10 years ago, so it's probably even better yet. But back to the computer side of things, well, 5 MB of hard drive is not a whole lot. I mean, maybe a couple Google Docs at the most. But the flash drive on the right can hold a large sum. Okay, 256 gig. I don't even have a guess how many Google Docs that is. But true or false, the post-war economy in World War II, post-World War II economy, it was booming. True or false? So again, what else is new in the 50s? People are moving to the burbs. They don't want to live in the cities anymore. You notice that, you know, different threats, different crimes, I guess, maybe possibly happening in the cities. So they decide to move to the outskirts. So you're going to notice that because of this need, there's going to be called cookie cutter homes being built. So what does this mean? Have you ever noticed in some neighborhoods how every house kind of looks the same? That's a cookie cutter neighborhood. So you're going to notice that with the new highway system that's going to be coming about here in a little bit, and the automobiles being purchased, people would rather live in the quiet burbs and drive into the city so they can kind of promote family living, I guess you would say. So, as I said, the GI Bills is what's going to make this go. People are going to buy their homes with that money. So, what is the effect? So, you're going to notice that vacation spots are going to start popping up. You're going to notice that automobiles are going to start being purchased. And you're going to notice that malls, stores, and then fire departments, communities, I mean, you name it, things are just going to start popping up all over the place. So, some popular vacation spots popping up in the 50s. Disneyland is going to start being a thing. Vegas is going to be start being a thing. And just basically anything that will get people to come to their spot and spend money. So again, the economy was rocking and rolling during this time. So what else is happening during this time? Now that kids don't have to work because of the Great Depression and because people have a little bit of GI Bill in their pocket, you're going to notice that education is going to start being getting some of focus again. So again, high school is going to have a little bit more emphasis. College is going to start having a little bit more emphasis. But now you're going to notice other factors feeding into that. One, the baby boom, like I said, preparing for tomorrow's youth. And then two, there's going to be this thing called Sputnik. We're going to talk about in the next slide. So you're going to notice, or next couple of slides, you're going to notice that science is going to get a whole bunch of attention now because we need to catch up. But it's also worth noting, something I'm going to talk about in Unit 5 called Brown versus the Board of Education is happening right in the heart of the 50s. And that's kind of where we're at in the Cold War. But I'm going to talk about that more in Unit 5, like I said. So, Sputnik, like I talked about, is going to be Russian for satellite. So, why this is all such a big deal is that the Soviet Union is going to send a satellite for the first time from the Earth of the surface of the Earth, wow, sorry about that, and shoot up into space. Now, again, this is not such a big deal because the satellite didn't do anything. It just made a bunch of sounds and shot the message back to the United States. Or not the Earth, sorry, excuse me, the Earth. But this now said to the American people and all over the world that the Soviet Union has the technology to fire something from the surface of the Earth up into space. So who's to say they can't just put a nuclear warhead on top of that and shoot a missile to the United States? So that's kind of why this is all a really big, scary thing. And we did not have that technology yet in the United States. So this is where you're going to see NASA is going to get its start because we need to get caught up. Now, you're probably wondering what the picture of this dog is in the lower right hand corner. Well, the Soviet Union fired a dog up into space, but it did not have a very good ending. And you're going to hear a really corny joke. But when the dog was coming back into the surface atmosphere of the Earth, it got really, really hot. And a hot dog happened. That was terrible. I'm going to keep going on. But when you see that NASA started, now there's a new thing called the space race, where it's us against the Soviet Union. Who can be the first country to put a human up into space? And the Soviet Union won. So this guy named Yuri Gagarin, top right picture, is going to be the first human being to go into space. And that's kind of cool, regardless of what side you're cheering for here. And then we, the United States, are going to put our first person up in space shortly after in May. And his name was Alan Shepard. And if you've ever seen the show Right Stuff or the movie Right Stuff, that's kind of what all this is about. So after he comes back down, our new president during the time, John F. Kennedy, is going to say we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. So by 1970. And you'll be happy to know he was right. So we had to accelerate our efforts, riding the wave off of Alan Shepard. Within the next year, we're going to put the first human being to orbit the Earth, to go around the Earth. And he did it a couple of times. And John Glenn had a success at it. And if you've ever seen the movie Hidden Figures, this is the premise of that movie. So again, now that we can go up into space, Now that we can go up and go around the Earth a few times, now the next step is the moon. So, a couple short years later, in 1969, the Apollo 11 landed on the moon. So the Soviet Union, they never really even got close. So they put machines on or like robots on the moon, but they didn't really put man on the moon. So you could make the argument that we won the space race. But really, what was the big deal about it is developing rocket technology. That's really at the heart of all of it. So, question: the space race put a bigger push on which subject in school? So it's also worth noting that during the Cold War culture is where you're going to see a second Red Scare start to pop up. So again, there's threat that people are going to be sympathetic towards the communists, and this is where you're going to see this guy in the picture on the left. Joseph McCarthy is going to be a senator from Wisconsin, and he's going to come out and basically accuse everybody of being communist. And this is what's going to the United States into a downfall, I guess you would say. And it's going to cause a lot of unneeded tensions in the United States. But it is worth noting again, communism, the exact opposite of what we believe in. So during this time, it was really easy to get the mass hysteria going pretty quick. But you also see pop culture things like Captain America start popping around. So that's kind of cool. But here is my last question for you. So true or false? Following World War II, the US entered into another Red Scare.